Mm. Okay, I've just put a general broadcast out, so I hope people would get it. Okay, so WITI, can you spotlight myself, Tosin and Bingpe? Can you spotlight us? Thank you. And then Tosin and Bingpe. Yeah, very good. So thank you so much. Have you started to stream? Thank you so much for coming to the WITI Africa session. We've had a few tech difficulties, so my apologies for just starting a bit late. WITI Africa, our focus in WITI Africa is to showcase the amazing work female Africans are doing in the tech space in Africa. Our goal is to connect them to the broader WITI community and the global world and change the narrative that people do have about Africa. We also create a space for African female tech professionals to network with each other and potentially collaborate so that they can scale and make bigger impacts in their different communities. Joining me is my co-host, Tosin Arojulu, and Tosin will introduce herself. I am the head of WITI Africa. I'm also the CEO of ThinkSTEM Foundation, which is a subsidiary of EY Communications. We provide a lot leadership training, coaching, mentoring, and advocacy. Tosin, can you introduce yourself before we introduce Bimpe Olufemi?
Oh, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Bimpe. It's great to have you here. Good to see you, Winifred. My name is Tosin Arojolu. As you can see, it's dark already here because I'm in Bahrain. I'm a leadership and communications coach, part of the John Maxwell team, and I help entrepreneurs build their leadership and communication skills so that they can have effective, collaborative, productive teams. All right. Thank you, Winifred. Back to you. You're muted, dear.
So Bimpe Olufemi is a seasoned executive leader with over 25 years of experience in the financial services sector and technology space, with a unique blend of strategic acumen, operational finance, and a passion for mentorship. Bimpe has consistently driven organizational success throughout her career. We're going to be hearing more about that. Her track record speaks volumes, showcasing her ability to translate business strategies into tangible outcomes and deliver significant financial value to stakeholders. She's a Toastmaster, like we are all Toastmasters here. I think Tosin is on her way to becoming a distinguished Toastmaster. I'm a Toastmaster myself, still at the beginning stages of my journey. So it's just good to know that we have all something in common. As the operations director at Leadway Assurance, Bingwe spearheaded transformative initiatives that revolutionize the customer experience, emphasizing simplicity and fostering a high-performance culture. Her commitment to continuous learning ensures she remains at the forefront of global best practices, driving innovation and excellence in every endeavor. That's another thing that we all share in common. We all love to learn. Josie is always getting one certificate after the other, and she just got an AI professional training certificate, Josie. So
Just
Josie is
like you,
always learning.
Winifred, you're
Sorry?
always in some course. I said, just like you're always in some course that you finished or the other.
Yes.
So we're together on that one.
Yeah, so we are all learners, and that is good. There's something common between all of us, so that's good. Another thing common in addition to Toastmasters. Prior to her role at Leadway, Bimpe served as the regional head of digital banking at Standard Chartered Bank, where she not only expanded the digital banking business in West Africa, but also championed diversity and inclusion initiatives and led impactful CSR endeavors. Her dedication to social responsibility extends beyond her professional sphere as she continues to serve on the boards of NGOs and provides advisory support to early stage tech startups. Bingbe, it's so good to have you here. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much. With that long introduction, I don't even recognize myself, but thank you very much. And it's really lovely to be here.
That's the goal of this. The goal of this is to give you some flowers, because the more you we talk about what you are doing, the more you begin to see how awesome you are and you can do more. So it's all part of capacity building, all part of just encouraging you to keep up the good work that you are doing at the local level. So tell us a bit about your career. I know we've kind of given a high level summary. What,
Yes.
what brought you to this place? Tell us about your career trajectory to date.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. It's actually been quite an interesting journey for me. And I say that because there was never really a plan to move into tech. Because when I was in secondary school and university, I had no clue about computers or tech. I studied psychology, and then when I went to do my master's was when I first got introduced into the world of tech. And my career took off from there. Now, of course, my father had quite a bit of introducing me to the sort of STEM world because he was very mathematical. He was a civil engineer. And so at the back of my mind, I kind of feel like I had a good grounding, a good foundation through my father. When I did my master's, I studied information systems engineering. And for the first time was when I saw a computer and I used a computer, and I had to learn very, very quickly the different aspects of computing and tech as we call it today. Now, of course, when I did my master's, I had left Nigeria to go to the UK to do my master's. And so being fairly new in that environment, there was a lot to pick up. My first role was as a desktop analyst. I don't know whether anybody here knows what the role of a desktop analyst is, but what I remember from it was, going under people's desks, trying to fit cables together so that their computers would work. And I knew that this was something that, was a very temporary thing for me, because sometimes you have to work your way up to where you need to be. And very, very quickly, I gained, people began to know the quality of my work. And then I was introduced into the business analysis world. And that was where I really took off in my career. Started doing work as a business analyst, and then as a project manager, and then as a program manager. And at that point, I felt that there was a need to really understand the way other aspects of a business works. I came to that conclusion because there were certain decisions that were being made. At this point, I was a manager, senior manager, and I didn't really understand the logic behind it. So I decided to go to business school. At business school, I learned quite a lot of things. I also learned that when you're in a business, you need to understand what's going on in other parts of the business to be able to do your work. That's the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned is that some of the skills that I had, which seemed to come naturally to me, were then honed in business school. And that was I didn't know that was what it was called at the time, but it was operations. When you go to business school, and possibly a few people who are on this call or who will watch this will know that when you go to business school, when you come out, typically you want to go into strategy. And a lot of reasons people want to go into strategy is that, you know, you end up in a consultancy firm or you end up in, you know, an investment bank, and that's where all the money is made. But I knew that that was really not my bent. I was an operational person. I like high thinking, but I also like to get my hands dirty. I like detail. How do we fix certain things? How do we find a solution for certain things? And business school gave me that confidence to be able to say, I'm not that strategic, but I'm very good at operations management. And this is an area that I could be successful. And so while a lot of my colleagues, my classmates at the time were going to consultancy firms or, you know, investment bankers, I went back to the organization that I worked for before business school. You might ask the question, why? It is easier to start a new role, take on new tasks in an organization that already knows your worth, rather than going to look for a new organization when you're transitioning into a new role. And so I went back to my old company and then started working within the operational space and then ended up heading the operations for that business. Subsequently, I moved to Nigeria. And in all of the work that I've done, I've typically worked in the financial services space. So when I moved to Nigeria, it was easier for me to get into that space and tech. So I worked for Standard Chartered. I came in as the regional head for their digital banking. Digital banking was taking off in Nigeria at the time. They needed somebody who had project management skills, you know, was able to liaise between the business and the tech team. So a bit of analytical work also going on in there. And that was quite an exciting time. Because digital banking was starting in Nigeria. You know, headed West Africa, was part of a team that, you know, headed the connectivity to the interbank network, the switch. We also created a forum which has become an association of heads of digital banking. And the purpose of that association is really to be able to manage effectively what's going on within the banking sector, so that people are doing the right things. Very, very rudimental at the time, but it's grown to be a large NGO. After that, I thought, what next? Banking in Nigeria, very different from banking in the UK. And I felt that, you know, maybe I needed to try my hands a bit on some entrepreneurial stuff. Now, I'm going to a bit of detail here because I've done different things in my career. If you look at my resume, if you look at my profile, one of the things you might think is, why have you done different things? I enjoy doing different things. And I think as a result of working with different types of people, working in different types of areas, I've actually come to the actualization of myself. So I became an entrepreneur. I decided to set up a graphics company, was designing graphics. I honestly didn't know that I had that skill. I just knew that I was excited and passionate about graphics. Did that for a while and then started looking for work again, and then ended up in the insurance industry. Why did I go into the insurance industry from banking? Which, if you know anything about Nigeria, insurance is quite behind in terms of technology when compared to banking. But I felt that it was a space that needed technology to move forward. It's a very conservative space, but nonetheless, they needed technology to move ahead and to be able to capture the numbers and the potential within this particular country. And so I joined one of the top organizations, Leadway Assurance, in this space. Top in the sense that they are very innovative, forward-looking, and they are open to technology. So I joined this organization in, again, a very different role. So up until now, I've been doing project management. I've been doing, within the tech space, but this was a totally new thing. This was operations. I'd never done it before. I got a call saying, can you come in? We would like your skills in our organization. We want you to be able to liaise within our tech guys and our business technical guys. And I thought, well, this is definitely an interesting one. And it would suddenly give me the sort of challenge that I was looking for. Turned out to be a very good decision because operations is actually not that different from project work. The only difference is that with projects, as you know, you've got a start and a finish. Whereas with operations, you just have to keep doing BAU, ensuring that things work all the time and there is no end to it because you're always tweaking, you're always finding new ways to do things. And so I've been in that space now for the last 7 years. Where am I now? I'm doing some interim work for small companies, and I'm enjoying what I'm contributing to those organizations. So that's me in a bit of a nutshell. A bit long, but yes.
No, that's why I gave you the space to talk, because there were so many points that you raised up, which I would definitely love to highlight. Starting in psychology and willing to explore the world of technology, it just shows that mindset of that willingness to learn. So when we're looking at you as a very successful person, right from the get-go, you were willing to, to say, let me try something else, even if I started in psychology, which is really about how people think. Technology is not so different. Writing a computer program is how the program thinks, and trying to get it to think the way you want it to think. But the willingness, because a lot of people are too afraid to embrace the unknown. They like to stay safe. So when you talk about your career, there's one thread is that from just you talking about it and you asking the question, why did you think I did this? I see that you say that strategy is not your forte, but I see that a lot of your thinking is very strategic. You sit down and think through things and say, okay, you know what? I'm somebody who likes to explore, do different things, use my strengths in different ways. And so I would like to try something. So those are two things I want to highlight for my audience, is that in order for you to get to where you want to get to, you've got to be willing to zoom into yourself and ask questions. You see, Bingpe is always asking questions. What do I want to do next? What is out there? And then be willing to take the risk without telling yourself that you do not have the skill set. You see, Bingpe is learning. She knows herself. She's like, okay, this is an area that I would love to use my strength to explore. I want to deep dive into the work that you did with the digitization project that you did with Standard Trust Bank, bringing digital banking to Nigeria, forming this great association. So since you are working with diverse groups of people, what did you do to get people up to speed and able to deliver, on objectives? What did you do in terms of development, in terms of workforce development? How did you go about that? Because there was the project, but then you had to bring people along to do that project. What did you people do?
So working for Standard Chartered Bank, if you know anything about Standard Chartered Bank, it's an international bank. And so the work that I needed to do to collaborate, to engender people, to be part of the team, was actually minimal compared to some of the other projects that I have worked in during my career. Standard Chartered has a very structured approach to doing things. You've got different teams all across the world working together on projects, and there is a timeline, there is a deadline. So everybody knows exactly what their role is in terms of how they're playing out that project. So for me, within Standard Chartered, on that particular project, the challenge wasn't so much the project itself. The challenge was, how do you get your customers to buy into the solution that you have now provided? And so that was where I found myself doing a lot of work. And that entailed a lot of communication. Back then, we didn't have ChatGPT to write all your communication for you. It also entailed going to the different branches and actually meeting some of our key clients, because we felt that if the key clients could buy into what we were doing, then it made it easier to speak to those who were lower down in the customer strata. So a lot of my work was spent going to the branches, sometimes setting up workshops in the branches where we're talking customers through what they need to do and how to use some of the products that we had launched. The other part of my work was actually, and this is more internal, working with some of my colleagues, senior colleagues, to see how we can get newer products into the country. Again, I state that Standard Chartered is an international bank. So some of the decisions are actually not made locally, at least back then, were not made locally. So you needed to have a good rapport with those outside of the country, like the head office, in order to be able to get your voice to be listened to in terms of what was going on ground. Let me give you an example. We were looking at how we were going to change the way our ATMs, these are the machines where you get cash, I don't know what it's called in other parts of the world, to behave in a different way. And so we're looking at our local counterparts and we're saying, this is very sophisticated. We need to do something like that. But then it's a conversation you then have to showcase that actually there is a need to either upgrade or to change the way we're doing things in order to meet the market. Because Nigeria at the time, even though it was a big market in Africa, wasn't a big market per se in Standard Chartered parlance. So there was a need to do that. So I found myself working with the branches and the customers, and also working with the head office to be able to get the approvals to get things through. And that wasn't an easy thing, but it meant identifying potential collaborators, working through some of our local senior people who already had relationships there, and getting them to introduce you to the right party.
So thank you so much for that. And this is such an important point, because when we are in university and getting our degree, they do not emphasize a lot of what I call core skills. People call it soft skills, but the ability to communicate. For you to be able to lead effectively, you've got to be able to communicate. You know, my mentor, Tosin's mentor, John Maxwell, says leadership is all about influence. For you to be able to influence people, you have to be able to communicate. I know Tosin's a communication coach. This is an area of her passion. And so we find that within the school system, as we continue our academic journey, we don't find people really emphasizing that you've got to be able to eloquently express your ideas in such a way that you can bring others along. You can get others to buy in. So I'm so grateful that you really talked about the most difficult part of your job was not even developing the workforce in terms of developing their competence, but it was really to influence them to bring in new products, able to influence them to buy into the idea, even the customers, So that's such an important thing, that in all our learning, it's very important that you learn how to communicate. For you to learn how to communicate, you have to understand different people's personality types. Tosin, I don't know if you want to just add a bit to what she said, because I know communication is your area of strength.
Sorry, before Tosi says, I'd like to say the flip side, because this didn't happen automatically. Like you said, they don't teach you these things in school. I struggled a lot. I struggled a lot because I felt that my work should speak for itself. It took me a while to realize that you could be very good at something, but you also need to be good on those social skills. Nobody really teaches you that. Yes, I believe that you should have mentors. I believe that you should have sponsors, but nobody teaches you that. So you almost have to figure it out on your own, on how to learn how to influence. And I'm still not the greatest person when it comes to that. I'll be honest with you and put my hands up. But increasingly, I realized that some of my struggles in my career, if I had had a mentor to put me through, or a sponsor to open up doors, I think my career would probably have been a lot easier than it has been to date. So I just wanted to put that out there so you don't think it's all roses.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that not only for you, even with even myself, and that's the value of WITI, where we bring people together to share the work they are doing, but we create opportunities for people to ask questions. We create opportunities for people to dialogue together. Because the thing about communication is that it's practice. The more you practice, the more you put your foot down, the more you get better at it. There's no, I go and read it in a book and there's an exam to pass. No, you've got to practice. You've got to take whatever you've heard and practice. Like everything you hear today, just going to teach somebody else what you have learned from Bingpe is practicing your communication skills, because communication is all about brain, your brain type. Some people are more expressive, others are not expressive. So the more you practice, the more you are building new neural pathways in your brain, and your brain begins to get used to that, so that next time it's easier to communicate. And this is so important for female engineers, especially because they go to meetings and they're with all these guys. They're minority on the table. They're the only one. They have an idea, but they're too afraid to express it. And even when they express it, nobody listens. And another guy will express the same idea, and they're like, Jack, that was a great idea, but the woman already expressed it. So being able to say, Jack, thank you for taking my idea. I already expressed that idea. These things are so important. Your ability to communicate effectively will determine your visibility at work and your promotion. You know, like you said, nobody is going to reward you for the work you are doing. They hired you because they thought you could do work. If you're not able to give voice to the work that you are doing and let people know, you are going to stay behind the computer doing work. But in order to grow and break the glass ceiling and the glass sleeper, you have got to be able to share the work you're doing. You have got to be able to influence others. You have got to be able to show that you are a leader, and that takes good communication. Tosin, do you want to add something to that? I know this is your area of expertise.
I just want to say how amazing Bingpe's journey has been and how very inspiring I found what she shared. And I think what I would like you to maybe highlight for us is, how did you go? Because you said it wasn't easy for you. So how did you go from not having the confidence, I'll say, to share your ideas to being confident? What helped you along that line to go from one that was not so confident to being more confident to share your thoughts?
Thank you for that, Toy. By the way, that's my sister's name. Tosi, yes.
Tosin,
So very earlier on when I moved to England, I had some friends, some non-Nigerian friends. I would go to parties with them, and I began to observe how easily it seemed for them to move from one person to the next person, have a conversation, move to the next person, have a seamless conversation, while I was kind of like behind the door wondering, what am I going to say? If you know anything about the British, they're very good at small talk. And so when I started to find out about how do you do this? And they said to me, look, you can have the same conversation with 20 people. You just hone those conversations. You go from A person, you have that conversation, you go to B, you have the same conversation. But at the back of your mind, what you really need to be thinking about is how little I can say while getting the other person to speak about themselves. People love speaking about themselves. So if you can go into a small crowd, introduce a topic, and let somebody talk about themselves, nobody's going to remember that you didn't actually have the conversation. They're going to think, oh, that person's very good at talking. Meanwhile, you did very little talking. And then I was introduced to Toastmasters. And so a lot of people, for example, don't believe that I'm a very shy person because I don't come across as shy. But I went to Toastmasters, and part of what I learned there was, irrespective of how shy you are, you could be an introvert, which I'm not. You could be an extrovert. You could be borderline. They can teach you and hone your skills in having public conversations. And that was my journey with Toastmasters. So that by the time I moved to Nigeria, I could stand in front of 200 people and have a conversation. That's the first thing. The second thing, which Winifred mentioned earlier on, in terms of, typically when you're in STEM or tech as a female, you're typically the only female and possibly the only Black person if you live outside of an African country. And I did that for probably most of over 10 years. So I was very comfortable working with guys. You say what you want, you say it how you want, they don't take offense, and they understand where you're coming from. When I moved to Nigeria, it was a totally different ball game. I then found myself working with women, and we all know as women, we can be quite sensitive, have people's backs up because people want the words to be quoted with sugar. My mother used to say when I was growing up that, Bimpe, you need to learn how to be diplomatic. I've had to learn that the hard way. And what do I mean by that? Now, if I don't think it needs to be said, I don't think you're going to benefit from it, sometimes I just shut up. But if I do need to say it, I roll it through my mind. I say it in my mind, okay, how is this going to look with this person? How are they going to take it? And then I deliver it. I still make mistakes. Many of my friends will probably still say, Bimpe, you're a bit too, you know what I mean? But over the years, I think I have really mellowed, and people have noticed that I have mellowed. That may have to do with maturity, but I think most of all, it has to do with your experience with people and really understanding how a different tone or a different way can actually help you achieve a lot more than just giving it to people in a way that you think that they would accept it. So those are the two things that I think that have really helped me.
Thank you so much for that. I'm so glad that this is being recorded, because I think this is something that people need to go and listen to again. And because what you are alluding to is that being able to improve in an area of your life that you have identified takes intentionality. You also have to have a plan. This morning I spoke to students in Nigeria, girls in ICT Day. I woke up very early at 6 o'clock, and we were bogged down by tech challenges, but I still managed to speak to them, and I got them to do a lot of exercises. And I was talking to them about leading self. And I told them there's leading self, there's leading with others, and there's leading others. And I broke it down to, you have to be aware of yourself, you have to be aware of others, you have to be able to regulate your emotions to build healthy relationships. And so when you tell me that you actually think through what you're going to say and ask yourself, how will it be delivered? How will it be received? That means that you are aware of others. And all of this is all about social and emotional intelligence, which they don't teach you in the classroom. And so it takes a lot of effort. My daughter is graduating from Princeton, and she's an introvert, and she's going to be going to the workforce. And I keep on telling her, everything you've learned in university, please put it at the back of your pocket. Because when you get to work, you're going to learn new skills. Be very intentional about learning. It's a different ball game. There are no classes, but if you learn, you evolve as a human being. It takes intentionality, it takes a plan, it takes awareness of yourself for you to become an effective communicator and be able to break the glass ceiling and make an impact in your community. So thank you so much for that. I would like to ask you another question about the fact that you lived in England, you worked on different projects, programs, you came down to Nigeria, you were able to adapt to Nigeria. I haven't been in Nigeria for over 30 years, so I don't know about how I'm going to adapt. Tosin is better than me. Just the very thought of it scares me to go and visit, but one day I will. But being able to work in different environments, having that international experience, oh my goodness, that is so commendable. And congratulations on being nominated and put on the list of PYN. I don't know how they pronounce that. That's kind of where I got your name. But working with all these people, different personalities, just different work attitudes, and being able to lead them takes a lot of their ability to trust you. And because if people don't trust you, I always say people do business with who they like and trust. If they don't like you, they don't trust you, you are not going to be able to get them to go along with your idea, no matter how brilliant your idea is, no matter how you can see your idea so clearly. So can you tell me, have you encountered anything where it was difficult to build trust with a team? How did you go about navigating that? And how did you go about getting them to trust you? Because as female leaders, our ability to lead others is so important to us, because we face more barriers than the guys because of our femininity. And again, if you live in this part of the world, your color. So being able to get people to trust you so that you can influence them and lead them, it takes skill set. So I want to understand, have you encountered difficulties in this area? If you have not, please tell us what you have used to get people to automatically trust you and allow you lead them. So please tell us about trusting. How do you build trust among your diverse teams that you have led?
So this is actually quite a pertinent question, and really takes me to when I joined Leadway Assurance. I joined to head their operations division. And as I said at the beginning, this role for me was a transition. It was a new one because I'd never done operations before. But I figured that the skills that I had as a project manager, as a business analyst, would actually help in this role. And again, this is something that we all need to be thinking about. If you're doing transitioning, what skills do you have? And how can you transition those skills to wherever it is you're going to? Now, of course, insurance is a very technical space and requires actually understanding what it is about for you to run the operations. When I joined, I was brought in to actually centralize the operations, which had been in different pots across the organization. So they wanted it centralized. And I didn't have a team for the first 3 months. There was no budget for me to hire my own team. So I really needed to look inside and see where I could get people from the different areas of the business to be part of my team. And that in itself was actually quite tricky, because Firstly, I'm new to the industry. Secondly, I don't know how this thing works, but I needed to get my team together. Luckily, I was able to engage and collaborate with the existing leaders who were then identifying the different people they felt would work better within the operational team. So that was the first leg. The second leg was we now had a team. And of course, I totally understand how the business leaders would work. If I'm a business leader, I've got 10 people, I need to move maybe 3 people to a different team. I look at the 8 that actually, or the 7 that I feel would benefit me, and the 3 that wouldn't, I'll be happy to move those along. Now, guess what? I ended up with a ramshackle team, some of who were good, had good potential, and could be developed into great people. And I had those who were in the middle, and I had those who I felt, no matter how much you do or put into it, it's not going to work. And so my role was, how do I then identify the performers or the potential performers? How do I identify those who were not going to work? But in the interim, I still needed to work with them until I was able to identify their skills and their contribution. That was a very tricky thing. And in this phase where you're trying to understand people, number one, you don't know anything about insurance. So they think, why did they bring the conversation at the time, not just internally, but even within the industry, is Leadway must have gone crazy. They've got to bring somebody else who does not understand anything about insurance to come and lead their operations. So your team doesn't trust you because they're thinking, well, you don't know anything about insurance. But the one thing I kept on saying to them is, I may not know about insurance, but I know how operations works. It's no different from how project management works. So if you are able to trust me in this, I will move you from A to B. In that early stage, I had to get my hands really dirty. We had a team who did the barest minimal before they joined the team. And so I then put certain processes in place and ensured that everybody learned all of the processes so that you could move people around. You didn't have specialists in a particular area, which meant that if that person is not around, work doesn't happen. So I had to cross-skill all of my staff in the different areas of the business. And I was there with them. 8 o'clock at night, we're there learning. And I know how many of them were so angry, abusive, behind my back, but we worked it together. The good news is that at the end of, I think it's about 3 to 6 months, where we then calmed down, many people had learned about other products, and so they could back up each other. Now, of course, I'm very English speaking. I've learned to speak Yoruba a lot more now than I did back then, but none of them knew that I spoke Yoruba, which is a local language. And so again, when we're talking about trust, if you're in a new environment, you need to find out how people will connect with you. That connection is key. It's not just about your skill. It's not just about the fact that you excel. It's how do you connect with your team? The day, and a lot of times, a lot of them speak Yoruba. The day I spoke Yoruba, they were shocked. And so they realized that not only was I good at what I was doing, I actually could also have a conversation with them if I needed to have a conversation with them. And I think the trust went from here to there, because it's like, well, if we don't want to speak something in English, we can come to you and speak in Yoruba. And that was quite revealing for me, because I'm not one who used to believe that when you go into an organization, you have to go into the local dialect. In fact, I don't believe in it at all. But the fact that they felt that you were one of them, it made a huge difference. So that was number 2. Number 3 was then getting them to be skilled up. So once you had built that initial trust where, it was cross-skilling, they knew that they could do a lot more, and then started to identify who were the performers and who were the laggards and who were the ones in between who could be the encouragers, for example. And that was how, operations took off. Operations, when I joined, was very manual in terms of the processes. By the time I left Leadway, we had digitized most of the processes. I had built up people who were going to take over from me, you know, and those who were not as great, we had either moved them into areas where we felt they would excel. Some of them thriving now, some of them not so. They've also been moved out if it hadn't worked for them. So it's really about breaking up the pie, so to speak, of your team into performers, those who are encouragers, but are also good. It's just that maybe they're not necessarily going to hit leadership level, and those that unfortunately you need to let go of, and then bring in new people. So that was a very daunting, I don't think I've experienced anything as daunting for me, because there were lots of different things that I was learning at the same time. But the one key message that I always put across was, my hands up, I'm not an expert in insurance. I then subsequently did the professional exams and became an expert, but at the time I wasn't, and I couldn't really have those conversations.
So thank you so much for that, because unfortunately we started late. I feel like we were cheated of some, maybe nearly 10 to 15 minutes. We have to bring you back for part 2. And it's because, oh my goodness, this skill set that you have described, I'm telling you, we need to dive deep into it and learn, because that will really help all of us, especially as females, to navigate the workplace, because there are so many dynamics. Your ability to connect with people, to communicate in a language that they understand, and so that can build trust. These are excellent tidbits that you have given us that, please, we are going to come back to you for part 2, because we have to finish this in an hour. But I want to open it out to people who have any questions for Bimpe, because we will definitely be talking to Bimpe. Get our tech ready and sit down, because here we are listening to an expert who has done so many amazing things. So I have to dive deep into just one thing that she's going to talk to us about, so we can all get pen and paper. You see, I've been writing all the things I've been learning from her, so I can learn, so we can learn and grow and be effective in our workplaces. Does anybody have a question for Bimpe? Caroline, it's good to see you here. If not, does anybody have a question? Tosin, do you have an additional question? I have some more questions for her.
I have a question.
Please go for it, Caroline.
Speaking somebody else's dialect, I mean, depends on how hard that dialect is to some degree, doesn't it? So how was it speaking the local dialect to you? How hard was that?
So actually, it is my local dialect. It's just that I wasn't very good at it, and I hadn't really used it in a long time. You don't use a language, you lose the details of it, as it were. So it wasn't that I was learning a new language from scratch. It was just that, firstly, I didn't believe that you needed to speak your local dialect in an office environment. But one of the things that became very clear was that in speaking the local dialect to some members of my team, they certainly felt a lot more comfortable, and the trust kind of like just went from here to there. So it's not really about learning a new language.
Yeah, and I think
Great, thank you.
And I know that I'm a John Maxwell certified trainer, and one of the courses we have is everyone communicates but few connect. I think the idea is doing something that will enable you connect with people in such a way they can trust you. If that means being able to speak the language, whatever you have to do to get them to trust you so that you can do business together. Because if people don't trust you, they're going to bring up so many barriers and obstacles, and it will make your life hell. So it may be speaking language, it may be staying late with them, it may be taking them out to eat. In my office, just to get our clients to trust us, we're always taking them out to eat. And I'm like, wait up. I cannot fit into my pants because I'm eating out all the time. So I'm like, I am not doing any of this. Oh my God. I said, the eating out is free because it's on company expense, but the losing weight is on me. So I'm telling you, I'm just eating salad. I am not eating no steak, no shrimp, none of that. Because the company understands what it means to build trust. If they have to take you out so that they can build trust, so that you can order their products, they are willing to do that. But I had to say, you know what? I am not eating the food. I can go out, we can talk, but we can talk about family and all those things, but I am not putting the food in my body, you know. But I think that's the point Bingpei is getting across. You do what you have to do because you are observing the people. So you are observing what the dynamic of the place, so you can make that intelligent decision about what you have to do to build trust. Bingpei, thank you so much for your time. I am so sorry about the delay, you know, but this was more than I could have expected. So, given the short notice of getting you on board, we will definitely be reaching back out to you, Tosi and myself. We would definitely love you to come back. We'll get all the tech ready. We need at least 1 hour to dive deep into these topics, which are so important for women. Ability to communicate so that you can connect, because being able to speak is different from communication. Communication is the ability to paint an image in the people that is the same as yours, so that they can come alongside you. So communication is something that we have to all learn more and more about. I don't think anybody arrives at top expertise. All throughout our life, we're learning and learning. So communication, trust, these are the reasons that we end this conversation.
Is Winifred frozen?
I think so. I thought it was me.
No, just say I can hear you. Bingpei, do you have one lasting thing? Tosi, actually, before Bingpei speaks, Tosi, do you have one lasting word, and then Bingpei before we close this?
I'm just looking forward to having Bingpei back. If we could have your LinkedIn to share with the group so that we can keep in touch with you, and then we'll look forward to your last words and also look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks very much, Tosi. Last words for me, when I look at my career, 3 things that I'd like people to take away, which I wish I learned when I was much younger, is firstly, understand the politics. As STEM people particularly, we need to understand what's going on. If we need to get a mentor, a sponsor to open up those doors, it's absolutely key. And that's something that I missed out when I was going through the ladder in my career. The second thing that I would like to say is that we need to learn about the different parts of the business. When you're STEM, you tend to think, this is my world technology. What's going on in finance? Can you get seconded to finance? Can you get seconded to HR? Can you get seconded to wherever it is? So that you learn different parts of the business. And that also helps you as you move up the ladder, if the intent is to move up the ladder. And the last thing for me, which I've always been, is being authentic to yourself. You cannot be somebody else. You've got to just be yourself. And if you are authentic to yourself, then that's a good place to start. So those are the 3 things that I would like to end this with. Thank you very much for having me here. I look forward to coming back. And hopefully we don't get the kind of tech issues that we had today. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your time here. Will be you can reach us if you want the recording, but I think it should be on the WITI site on the LinkedIn. But if you don't see that, you can reach out to me, can connect with me on LinkedIn, and look forward to our June speaker series, and we look forward to bringing Bingpei back. Thank you, Bingpei. Thank you, Tosin, for your time. Goodbye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Sorry,
Thank you.
I joined late.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.